Dave, I alluded to this off the top. When I think great rivalries across the country, and then I stop with Gainesville and Tallahassee, Florida State, I think back to when college football was a run-first game, and Florida State were two of the programs in the country that brought elite wide receivers and defensive backs to the table consistently. And we're talking mid to late 80s into the 90s, and you got your first feel for just dynamic playmaking on both sides of the ball. And again, DBs that were headed to the NFL facing off against their counterparts that they would see for the next 10 or 12 years. Your thoughts about the rivalry, what maybe makes it special, and any particular games in past years come to mind?
All these guys know each other, like you mentioned, and they're recruited by the same coaches, and they've went to the same high schools. They've played against each other since they were 6, 7, 8 years old. So they know each other. Some guys have been committed to Florida and go to FSU. Some guys have been committed to FSU and go to Florida. So there's a little bit of heated there. Of course, Florida State has the big Gators head statue that they carry around. Every time they win, they hoist it up in the air, and and we remember the '90s and the pregame fights. Then the game would get so ugly, and then of course Florida in '96 they lose to FSU, and Danny Werfel was just getting pounded and pounded and pounded, and Bobby Bowden said, "Oh, we just played to the echo of the whistle." Well, Florida luckily got their rematch in the national championship game and remembered that. Danny Werfel lined up in the shotgun almost the entire game, and Florida routed FSU for their first national championship. And then the very next matchup, '97, Florida wasn't supposed to have a chance. FSU was on their way to another national championship. Well, magic in the swamp with Fred Taylor just running crazy on the FSU defense there, and Florida escapes with a win that was a big upset. But you've had games where they've played in the regular season and had a Sugar Bowl rematch. Of course, Florida in '94, the choke at Doak, where Spurrier never won in Tallahassee, had a 31-3 lead, I believe, going into the fourth quarter. And the game ended in a 31-31 tie, and Florida State wins the rematch in the Sugar Bowl. So it's you've had games where they've been big and they've had rematches, and it's not quite what it was in the '90s, but it's slowly getting back there. So what happens with Jimbo Fisher? Does he stay around at FSU and keep this rivalry going? If it's not, who do they get next to keep this going? But it is interesting. These matchups have been ugly at times, but a lot of in-state rivalries are that way.
Yeah, if you're a college football fan, this is the weekend. This is rivalry weekend, and this is one of those games. Florida State, it's always been a special one. David Waters from Gators Breakdown, breaking down the Noles and the Gators. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thanks, Mark.